Greetings. How are you on this Friday? Hope you're getting set for a really good weekend. Boy, oh boy, we got NFL football again tonight. We got college football all day, and then we have week one of the NFL all day long watching NFL on Sunday. So that's good enough for me. Plus, Cardinals are at home against Seattle. They'll continue to push and push and push to see how many games they can win and how close they can come. The odds in terms of the playoffs remain very much against them. And you didn't need me to tell you that. But I hope you're doing good. Thank you for your support of the Bernie channel here on YouTube. We're doing great. Continue to be blown away by all the comments. And, you know, even though sometimes in the comment section, I try to engage. I spend a lot of time engaging, not as much as I'd like to, but I can only do so much. You know, and sometimes I disagree with what you have to say in there, but that's okay. The whole point is to just say, here's what I think, then you tell me what you think. And if I agree, I say, yeah, I think that's really logical. Sometimes when I actually disagree with an opinion, I respect the way it's presented. If it's thoughtful and it's taken a lot of important things into consideration, that's a beautiful thing because it challenges me to think about my own position. I like to be challenged to think, but there are also times when, you know, I'm going to kind of stick to things hard when I think there's some unfairness or some inaccurate things that are said. So I'm not going to be like Mr. Fake Nice Guy all the time either. But the bottom line is I love the engagement. I love all the comments. It's kind of like turning into an online forum. And that's kind of cool. That is kind of cool. So thank you very much. Even to those who maybe think I'm full of it, I just appreciate the fact that you check it out. I'm going to do something a little different today. I'm going to do a combination Blues Cardinals video on this Friday. I think it's interesting because, you know, the Blues won the Stanley Cup in 2019, and they had a really great team coming back in 2020. And in fact, if I'm not mistaken, and if I am mistaken, correct me, but even if I'm mistaken by a little, because I forgot to look this up, I would be only off by a little. But at the time the NHL shut down because of COVID, I think the Blues had the best record in the league, and they were going great. And after the long layoff, it just, you know, obviously just threw everything upside down, not only in sports, but the entire world for just about. It just wasn't the same, you know, when the Blues and all the other NHL teams reconvened and started up, the Blues just weren't the same, you know. So we'll never know what would have happened in 2020. It would have been a long shot, maybe for the Blues to win it all, but I think they would have had a chance anyway. So, but they made the postseason, even though they were awful in 20, and they made the postseason in 21. They made the postseason in 22. Now, there came a time, though, where it was time to retool. I don't get into the verbiage or the terminology. I don't get hung up on that, whether you call it a rebuilding or a soft rebuild or a retooling or a renovation. I mean, it's just we get hung up on the phraseology. I don't. But I think Doug Armstrong had some problems. Some of the problems of the Blues president of hockey operations, some of the problems he did create. And so I'm going to knock this down right away. You know, if I praise Armstrong, which I'm going to, and I don't mention every single damn mistake he ever made, you know, I know what the reaction is going to be. Oh, how come you didn't talk about this? How come you didn't talk about that Braden? I can't talk. How come you didn't talk about that Shen extension? How come you didn't talk about letting Alex Pietrangelo get away? I've talked about all that stuff, okay? All of it, many times over. Doug Armstrong has not always spent payroll dollars wisely. Some things that he made an attempt in good faith to improve his team didn't work out. Torrey Krug being a great example, right? Not saying the guy's like, oh my gosh, he's utterly brilliant. He's never did anything wrong. We should bow down before him. No, I'm not saying that. He's made a lot of mistakes. But here's the thing I like so much and respect so much about Doug Armstrong. He keeps plugging away. Like, it's kind of like, you contrast that to the Cardinals, where the Cardinals try to get some things done, and by their standards, trying to get things done, and it doesn't work, right? And so it's kind of like, oh, well, we tried. And then they go back into their complacency shell, right? The one thing about Army, we can quibble about stuff he did. Hey, man, I was not thrilled when they fired Craig Berube, but as it turned out, that's a difference between me and a lot of other people. At the time, I was like, man, this is kind of a dirty thing to do to the only Blues coach to win a Stanley Cup. But you have to also look at the fact that, the players, for whatever reason, were just tuning him out. They weren't responding, and that's on them. But it's the old saying, you can't replace the entire roster, not in this day and age with all these guaranteed contracts. But, Army's decision to give this job to an interim basis to Drew Bannister worked out. The team responded. I mean, the Blues finished, they were 11 points better at the end of the season than they were at the end of 23. I mean, they're 43, 36, and 6. They had 92 points. They never were really in serious postseason contention, but they were clearly a lot better team and much more respectable, and they were more organized. And so my point is, even if I didn't like the Berube hiring, I'm sorry, it's not a flip-flop to come back almost a year later and say, well, I didn't like it, but it actually worked out pretty well. I mean, do you not? We all give opinions about a move made at the time. If the way it plays out is in contradiction of our opinions, does that mean we clam up like little babies? Oh, I'm not going to acknowledge that actually he made a good move. Oh, I'm not going to do that because I'll lose some man card points. Oh, I can't show that I might have been wrong about something. No, I'm just an idiot. Oh, it's the worst move that's ever been made in the history of mankind. No, I'm not doing that. If I don't like a move, but the move turns out well, I got no problem coming back and say, you know what, I was wrong about that. It actually worked out. Why is that so hard to do for some people? Please explain. Why is that so hard to do for some people? I don't get it. Don't be so damn insecure, okay? Anyway, I'm rolling to this morning. I had a big espresso a little while ago. Anyway, so after they made the postseason 2022, and they did need a retooling or a soft rebuild or whatever you want to call it. And they were barely below 500. I mean, literally like one game below 500 in 2023. And then they really improved, especially after the coaching change last season. And I repeat, 92 points it's not like that. Oh, man, that's awful. No, the Western Conference is loaded with teams, man, loaded with really, really good teams. So getting back to one of my main points, Doug Armstrong never stops. He never stops looking for a way to get better. He's limited, of course, because there's a salary cap, and he's limited by, as I said, he's also been kind of boxed in by some of his unfortunate payroll decisions, especially some of the money he's invested in their defense group. But is he going to give up? Is he going to say, oh, well, we made a mistake. I guess we'll just have to kind of let this play out, and all that stuff. No, he gets back to work. He rolls up his sleeve. I love the offseason they had, where the Cardinals last offseason listen, I'm not going to sit here and act like they didn't try to do something. My goodness, they signed 3 starting pitchers. And once again, you have to follow along what I've said about this. They needed an influx of starting pitching. And their starting pitching is better this year than last year, except that's not much of a bar to clear, because last year, literally, the Cardinals in 2023 had the worst starting pitching ERA in the history of the franchise in a full season. That's a fact. But we all knew that this rotation might wear out. A lot of old guys, a couple guys coming back. Miklasz and Match weren't very good. So they were going to have to kind of thread the needle, and everything had to go right, and that didn't happen. And so the starting rotation has deteriorated as the season has gone along. But did John Mozeliak do anything to upgrade the rest of the roster? They signed Matt Carpenter. I was okay with that. I mean, for a bench guy, he's been okay, but he's also been on the IL a couple times. The whole Brandon Crawford thing is just waste of a roster space. But what else did they address? Did they bring in any depth? Did they bring in a quality at bat for the bench? Did they bring in somebody who, as a role player, could, really change games? No. It was like, well, we signed our 3 starting pitchers. You can thank us now. And they made some bullpen upgrades, and I think Chaim Bloom had a lot to do with that. And, anybody talks about, well, what has Chaim Bloom done? Some of these relievers, I'm not impressed. You're not impressed with Ryan Fernandez? You don't think he's done a good job this year as a rookie? He's never pitched in major leagues before? Really? So you disapprove of the Andrew Kittredge maneuver, right? So you thought, Chaim Bloom, what was he recommending? This is disgusting. No. Andrew Kittredge, like a lot of relievers, went through a phase where he, metaphorically speaking, hit the wall a little bit, but he bounced out of it. He cleared it, came back. He's been a tremendous asset. When you look at their late inning relief, they've lost 1 game all year when they've, led through 8, and they've lost, I think, 2 or 3 only when they've led after 7 innings. So you're not going to get every personnel move right, but without Chaim Bloom recommending some of these relief options, this bullpen wouldn't be nearly as good as it is. And factually, it is a very good bullpen. Okay. Top 10. And that's being modest. More like top 7, top 8. So the Cardinals signed the 3 pitchers. They kind of took their chances. Sonny Gray's been okay. He's been good, but let's face it. I've talked about this. Sonny Gray also, until the other night in Milwaukee, when he did change some pitch patterns, which is something that I wrote about and talked about and said, look, I'm an idiot, but I can see that hitters are waiting. When he's on the road, he wants to establish something early, and he throws way too many four-seam fastballs and sinkers early in the count. First pitch, second pitch, third pitch. Hitters are smart. And they work for smart organizations, unlike some other organizations that aren't so smart. Anyway, teams are going to know. Well, wait a minute. Sonny Gray's got good stuff, but he's going to throw. Hey, gentlemen, we'll have a quick meeting on this. First couple pitches of the at bat, you're going to get a four-seam, or you're going to get a sinker, and that's pretty much it. So, hey, man, go hunting. So the other night in Milwaukee, Sonny Gray actually diversified how he pitches early in the count, which is something I said he had to do. And listen, that sounds obnoxious. I'm not saying I know more than I can to. I don't, okay? But I do know when you can look at a pattern with all the information's out there, even someone like me can say, well, it's too predictable. They probably got to change that up. And so against Milwaukee, he threw a lot more cutters and change-ups early in the count. Mix more curveballs in early in the count, and it really did make a difference. It kept the Brewers off balance. So my point is, and I know, man, I'm going all over the place here, but this is me. You don't have to watch it, right? I'm grateful that you do. Sonny Gray has been brutal on the road, just brutal, except for the other night was really good. And so I don't know, do we call him an ace because he's really good at home and he's terrible on the road? I don't think so. I don't think so. And we all know Lynn ran out of gas and was not the innings eater we thought. We know that Kyle Gibson, who I have great respect for, as the season has gone along, his ERAs continue to grow and grow and grow, which is kind of like his pattern, as some of you have pointed out, something that I was ignorant about. And I admit, again, I have no problem admitting that, right? And one of the best things that, and since Ali Marmol stuck with Miklasz and Mats, it's kind of hard to find an opening to do something, but Ali Marmol very much was in favor of repurposing Andre Pallante. This idea that he's a relief pitcher, stupid. And I give Marmol credit for, working Pallante back in there as a starter, and he's been really, really good. Please forgive me, because I know we're not supposed to give the manager credit for anything. Little sarcasm gets my blood going, so bear with me. Give me a little room here. So anyway, the Cardinals made 3 moves, added a couple relievers. Chaim Bloom was the guy that basically did that in terms of the relievers. And then there was kind of, that's it. you're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah, there's no need to thank us. You're welcome. So let's contrast that with the Blues. Doug Armstrong and the Blues have been out of the playoffs a couple of years. They don't like it. He did a really gutsy thing by firing the only coach to ever win a Stanley Cup in Blues history. I mean, that took some cojones. Absolutely, it did. And Armstrong caught a lot of heat for it. But let's contrast the Blues offseason with what the Cardinals' approach was, right? I mean, Armstrong was absolutely relentless. Now, I know some people were just like, well, he didn't sign any big-time free agent. Well, first of all, he didn't have the room. So what are you going to do? I mean, he's limiting what he can do. See, that's what makes a really good leader of an organization, even though he makes mistakes, even though he had some things go wrong, even though part of his mistakes led to payroll clog. He doesn't throw his hands up, and he's like, okay, I know we're limited in money. I know I can only do so much. I can't make this big dramatic free agent signing, but there's other ways to improve the team. There's other ways to be resourceful and to make some things happen. And he did a hell of a job this offseason. I mean, he did a hell of a job this offseason. Let's go through it a little bit, and I have to look at my notes because there's been so many things. He made upgrades at every level of the team, except goaltending, because he didn't have to do that. I mean, he added 4 forwards, which probably, well, first of all, I was going to give him a lot more depth and a lot more options, and it's also, by adding this forward depth, probably going to have more scoring from your bottom 6. And the other thing, you don't have to rush young forwards who really could use some time in the American Hockey League. Am I excited by Kapanen? Well, hell no. But the point is, when you have this really abundant forward depth, it gives you a chance to do what's best for a young forward instead of rushing them in right away. And as they, I'm talking about Dvorsky, Bolduc, and there's some others coming along. When they start to play really, really well, gain that experience, in Bolduc's case, he already was very good in the AHL. But if he just continues to grow and grow and grow, there'll be a time where you can switch people out. You can plug them in and say bye-bye to a couple of these forwards. But the point is, he upgraded the forward position in terms of depth, and they desperately needed that. They had to rely on some guys who, frankly, really won't be in their thinking or their plans that much this year. And then he went out, and again, this defense group has been an albatross, but did that prevent Armstrong from trying to make it better? No, he kept, like I said, man, he kept grinding away. And, this defense group in the last couple, 3 seasons, has not been consistent enough. It hasn't been good enough. It just simply has been a big disappointment. But how do you address that? Well, he went out and got 3 new defensemen, and we know that Torrey Krug is out for the season is going to have ankle surgery. His career could be over. Who knows? But Armstrong anticipated that, and Armstrong made some moves in advance. And now the Blues have more defensemen in a way that they know what to do with. I mean, Philip Broberg, Ryan Sutter, Pierre-Olivier Joseph, you're adding different kind of defensemen, different skill sets, but your depth is much, much better. The Blues have 10 defensemen under contract going into camp, 9 of whom are on one-way contracts. In other words, it's not like, well, you can send them down to minors, and you only have to pay them a fraction of what it would cost if they're in the NHL. So it makes for some tough decisions. But isn't it great that the Blues have choices now? Good choices, good options at the forward position, at the defense position. Isn't it great that you can upgrade even when you are limited by your payroll space? Isn't it great that you can still find ways to upgrade your depth, which was a really big deal? You had to do it. Even though you, as the leader of the hockey operation, had made some mistakes that led to the problem anyway. Okay. Armstrong took some measured risks this offseason. He gambled on some players. that, in my opinion, have a lot more upside than downside. And then the downside is, even if realized, it's not going to harm the team in a significant way. And meanwhile, you have more depth, more choices, more options. And the depth is so much better, and it's going to really help them get through the long grind of seasons with injuries and players slumping and all that other stuff. The stroke of genius, of course, and you probably wonder why didn't I get to this? I wanted to save this one as a separate category. I mean, out of the blue, you think that we all think the Blues are done for the summer, and it's like, no, they're not done. You talk about, ambushing the Edmonton Oilers. You talk about like swooping in a stealth move. And I remember reading all about it, NHL, Canadian and U.S. media. It's just like, what's Armstrong doing? I can't believe this. He signed a 23-year-old defenseman, Philip Broberg, to an offer sheet because, the Oilers would have to match it. And Army was not content with that. He also signed a 23-year-old forward, Dylan Holloway, to an offer sheet. Both of these guys, first-round picks. In fact, and I got to look at my notes because I screw these things up if I don't. Broberg was the 8th overall pick in his draft class, and Holloway was 14th overall in his draft class. These guys are young. They have tremendous upside. They can help the team now, and they can help the team in the future. And Doug Armstrong correctly calculated that Edmonton that had some guys to sign, and boy, they're short on money. They've spent a lot. They wouldn't match the offer sheets. And if they did match the offer sheets and Army and the Blues did not get Broberg or Holloway, well, so what? He took a shot. He went for it. And his gamble was absolutely correct. He kind of called Edmonton's bluff, and they folded. That's great stuff, man. That is just great stuff. So you got to appreciate that about him. And contrast that to the Cardinals, and they're measured, conservative. We got the Cardinal way. We believe in our model. We're going to calibrate. We can get a playoffs with 86 wins. Look, the Blues have to get back into the playoffs, but I think Armstrong's gotten them a lot closer. I think they got a chance. That's as far as I'll go because the conference is very, very tough. But he did some other things too. He had a good job of selling off assets at the trade deadline for draft picks. They're getting something out of that. He made that one-sided trade for Buchnevich, and then when people like me thought, well, there's no way that Buchnevich will want to re-sign here because maybe this thing's not going the way that he thought. No, he signed Buchnevich to a contract extension. He locked in Kyrou or Thomas, and I know that Kyrou especially drives us nuts sometimes, but listen, they're very, very talented. They're very, very good. Those investments made perfect sense. And now they're under contract for a long time, and I think both of these guys really responded to the coaching change. I think they've drafted well. They're going to have several elite guys playing, in college still, like that Jimmy Sungaroo, but also, guys that I mentioned here being AHL, but they're on the way. There's going to be intense competition for roster spots. Let me ask you this. Did the St. Louis Cardinals have intense competition for roster spots for playing time going into the 2024 campaign? The answer is heck no. They obviously didn't. And the other thing I will draw between the two is that Tom Stillman, the chairman, the owner and the chairman of the St. Louis Blues, he spends to the cap or very close to it. There's been a couple times where they weren't all that close, but again, when you're retooling, what is the point to spend to the cap? You're in a different realm, but they're sitting there again today, where they're pretty close to the salary cap limit. And that's been Tom Stillman's consistency through the years. And again, Blues is not a wealthy franchise. They don't have the resources, the revenue, all the adjacent stuff that pours in money the way that the St. Louis Cardinals do. They compete in a medium market. It's a great, great, passionate hockey town. And that's why Blues fans stay with this group, because they know, and I give them a lot of credit, they know that Stillman cares and Stillman's going to do whatever he can. They also know Stillman works well with Army, but in a way that's productive. Where Army doesn't say, well, the owner really likes me. He gave me a contract. The owner really likes me. So let's go play some golf or whatever. No, and I'm not saying literally, anybody says that, but my point is where Mo knows that, Bill DeWitt likes things a certain way, and he kind of goes along with the plan, and he can only do what I can, that kind of thing. He sort of succumbs to it. The dynamic between Stillman and Armstrong is much different, because Stillman knows Armstrong is going to go out and stir the pot and try again. So the Blues, for their market size, have a highly competitive payroll, and they have a payroll that puts them in the same class with some teams that have a lot more revenue. And, that's an admirable thing. Is that true of the Cardinals? No, it's not. The other thing, if you're like me, and I understand that the local TV contract is a concern, Diamond Sports, which owns the regional sports networks, all the Bally's and some other ones, they've been, now that they're still in bankruptcy proceedings, and they make promises, and everyone's like, oh, okay, everything looks like it's going to be okay. And then it goes the other way again. And as we sit here this morning, no one's sure what TV contracts will look like for the Cardinals. The local TV contract will look like for the Cardinals in 2025. The same, however, applies to the Blues. That's the point. You hear the Cardinals talk about this all the time. You see the media write about this or talk about this all the time. Well, they're very concerned about this local TV contract, and this has really had an impact on what they're doing or what they think they can do. Did I miss something here? Don't the Blues and the Cardinals share the same carrier? Aren't they both members of the Bally Sports Regional Network family? Don't they both, in effect, sit and wait to see what's going to happen with Diamond Sports? The Blues are in the same predicament that the Cardinals are in, and all the Cardinals do is complain about it and use it to get empathy. Oh, poor Cardinals, this TV cloud hanging over their head. Oh my goodness, what can they do? Do you ever hear any of that stuff coming out of Enterprise Center? They're like, well, it's not a good situation, but we'll do what we do. All you can do is make the best of it until we have clarity. It's a really professional, classy approach. They're not going to whine about it to try to score cheap points with the media and fans. Some of you have said this, and I'll wrap this up. Some of you said this, and I totally agree. And I may be ignorant to the facts, but, I look at these other markets around, I'm going to say the United States, and it's like you see that teams combining on their own, local TV, cable, streaming, whatever, network. Why don't the Blues and Cardinals team up? Listen, they're very compatible. The owners like each other. The executives like each other. I'm talking about like Bill DeWitt III and, Chris Zimmerman and all that. They're aligned. They work together. At some point, wouldn't it be good to just take this into your own hands? I'm talking about the Blues and the Cardinals both. So we'll see what's going to happen, but I wanted to I'm just really encouraged by this offseason that Doug Armstrong's had, because he was daring with these offer sheets that worked, and he improved their depth without sacrificing a lot of capital, either be financial or through prospects or draft picks or whatever. Really, really fired up the way he just keeps pounding away, right? And they're in a pretty good position going into the season. The Cardinals, the contrast to the Blues does not serve them well. They do not come out well in that. Listen, I want another 30 minutes. Some of you complain that I don't do them long enough. Some of you complain that they're too long. I get it. I do get it. I'll find the happy medium. I respect your opinions, no matter where you are on that. But it also is hard to kind of please everybody in terms of length, right? In terms of how long these things are. But you can always count on a lot of strong opinions. And yeah, I may take kind of the roundabout way to get to some things, but that's who I am. You should know that by now. Thank you all very much. Have a great weekend.